Hey people, welcome back to the channel. This is a story in which Madara is Naruto's grandfather. He implanted his and Hashirama's cells into Naruto and trained him, which made him extremely strong. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment if you want to suggest fanfic. Check the description for credits and support the creator of the story. So let us begin. Chapter 39. The 1st of January. Just as he had told Hagoromo, after an hour, Naruto was ready to move again. There were no binds that could hold him for too long. He could have chosen to manifest an image of himself into this village, but he chose to come here to lay the foundations himself. A clone wouldn't do this, his own eyes and hands to be a witness to all that he was going to do. Currently he was right above Konoha. His presence had yet to be noticed because he had not yet passed the barrier that surrounded the village, he was floating just above it. Not minding about being detected or not, Naruto descended down the village and passed through the barrier. His descent to the ground was very slow and relaxed. He was in no hurry to leave Konoha, just yet. And his work was going to be little, so there was no need to work on the clock. Naruto finally got close to the ground at the center of the village, the civilian district, and it looked like one of them shopping streets. There was no peace around the streets, a lot of noise about this and that. Loud music invading his ears, the drunkard hypocrites laughing about this and that. Still, Naruto ignored it all. The people around the district were quick to become aware of his presence, it was impossible not to do so, he'd brought his power down just so they could feel it. He wanted his power to be felt just so they could understand what they were dealing with. Some people just passed him, looking a bit curious, until they got a good look at him, and they realized who it was. Some panicked while others looked ready to stone him to death, if the heated glares were anything to go by. Despite his lack of blonde hair, these people could recognize him any time of the day. How could they mistake him after all? Their sense of his presence was rather outstanding. Naruto began to feel negative emotions off these people. These emotions flooded his senses like a torrid sea wave. The emotions nearly violated his senses and shut them down. The kind of hatred he felt would be sickening to any human. Despite it all, Naruto just kept calm as he listened to their mouthful rants. What is he doing here? Looking at him looking almighty inside our village, who does he think he is? Is there a rumor that he was banished? What brings him here? Traitor. He dares come back here after attacking our Hokage at the Cage Summit. He is a wanted criminal from other villages, what brings here? Has he come here to bring trouble to our peaceful village? With him there is always trouble. Ah, that thing has returned again. Why won't it just leave us alone? I just hope Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya-sama kill it, or just have it face a public execution for being a traitor. We gave it a home and then it betrayed us. It must not be allowed to live. We should just stone it right here. Yay. But no one made their move. That murmurs that Naruto picked up from the villagers who stayed away from. Despite their thoughts, they could still feel his power. Even with that they were saying about him, Naruto felt nothing. He didn't even so much as feel like venting off or hitting someone, he merely allowed them to joyfully express their bloody thoughts. Someone was actually brave to come at him. You finally decided to show up from whatever hole you have been hiding, huh? Today is your day, Hokage-sama will make sure that you don't leave this village. You will face judgment for your crimes, traitor. He actually tried to spit on the blonde, but it never came out. He just coughed up. Naruto ignored the man in favor of looking at the clear skies. He was waiting for Tsunade and her company to show up. It did not take long before the civilians cleared at the Hokage, surrounded by Jiraiya and Kakashi appeared. With a number of Anbu. They all surrounded him, looking prepared for anything. Filthy humans, disgusting to before sight, Naruto stated, not particularly to anyone. But everyone heard him quite clearly, and they all understood who he was referring to. The fact that you are here and Sasuke isn't means he has failed, Tsunade stated in a tone of all business and formality. Her firm gaze studying Naruto's form with curiosity. Naruto then faced her, he tilted his head a little. But his eyes were not straight at the Hokage. They were at the purple-head woman behind her. In a silent movement that left everyone with wide eyes, he was in front of Yugao. But his staff remained where he had been standing. Sadness, longing, hope, and relief, those were the emotions he read from her. It was indeed what she was feeling, but she put that aside. She smiled at him, but could not say a word to him. Naruto didn't return the smile. His face stayed neutral, and it seemed natural. He spoke again. Interesting. He then disappeared back to his staff. Silence. Yugao felt as though something had broken in her heart. There was nothing inside his eyes, just a void of emptiness. This wasn't the Naruto she knew, this was a completely different person. He didn't even say hello to her, or say something that would soothe her soul. The thought drove a wooden dagger straight into her heart. Where was the love? Tsunade gritted her teeth. Are you going to tell me why are you here, or should I order my Anbu to just apprehend you so we can tell us what you want? The fifth Hokage spoke in a low growl, eyes still narrowed straight at Naruto. Naruto seemed to become a little interested in her. Liar, he said smoothly. Regardless of what I say, you are going to end up ordering your Anbu to capture me. You really shouldn't present it like that. Tsunade was not deterred, nor did she deny she would do something like that. In fact, she appreciated that he understood things perfectly. Now that you know your options, shall we get onto it? Tell me what you want. Or we will take you down to our special rooms and get everything we want off your head. Liar, Naruto stated again, in the same tone. Even if I answer you, you are still going to attempt to take me to Inoichi so he can read everything from my head. You know torture won't work, hence Inoichi is put in the picture. Put it in whatever way you like. The situation still does change the situation. Your presence here violates your banishment and you are still a wanted criminal. Whether I lie or not doesn't really matter, you still have to be judged for your crimes, Tsunade responded with a small shrug of her shoulders. For what is worth, I wish things would have turned out a bit differently than this. Liar, Naruto responded neutrally. Tsunade was now annoyed. If you are gone going things hard, I can always make you talk. I have been under stress lately and I can use a punching bag. Despite those words leaving her mouth confidently, the blonde Hokage doubted she could even do so. He felt far powerful beyond Madara and 5 cages couldn't defeat the infamous Uchiha, what of him then? However, it didn't mean she was going to back down without a fight. There were many ways to take down a powerful foe. Pitiful, that was the only word that left Naruto's mouth. The response bugged the Hokage too much. She thought of lunging at him for it. But before she could jump on Naruto, Jiraiya questioned. Sasuke went after you, and if you are here it means he failed. Did you kill him? Jiraiya asked in a quiet tone. Naruto regarded him for a moment. No, he said. I will tell you why Uchiha Naruto has come for here. He has come to set the stage for redemption, he spoke and gripped his staff, which had been floating on its own beside him. Yes, there was no reason to hide it from them now. It was going to begin, better he tell them before it starts. There was nothing they could do about it. They couldn't stop him, even if he told them how exactly he was going to go about the redemption. Redemption? What do you mean by that? Filthy, disgusting, and vile, Naruto simply stated. Even when this village is wrong, it is right. You fail to acknowledge your own faults, never admitting to your flaws. You rejoice in this vile peace, and continue to joyfully dance in this fake peace. Perhaps you leaders are right, but these people you lead are swallow, disgusting pigs that I wish to redeem. Everyone narrowed their eyes at him, but it was Tsunade who first spoke. Excuse me. I know the people of Konoha wronged you, but I would not to say that these people are vile. And this peace might have come in other means, but we have also suffered great pain. These people have lost their loved ones, they have lost so much. Pitiful, a simple response from Naruto. There was nothing in his tone, nothing in his eyes. He looked up to the heavens, away from the humans. Everyone loses something every now and then. But the wrong thing is that you people think your pain is greater than everyone's. You are a prime example of that, Tsunade. If you think if your pain is greater than everyone's, you disregard other people's sufferings, excuse your flaws on your pain. Certainly, I may have thought that my pain was greater than anyone's, I mean I had lost my fiancé and brother for this village. But Jiraiya did make me realize that I was not the only one suffering. There are others who have lost more than I have. What I am trying to say is that eventually we all learn. Tsunade reasoned, in the firm tone. I learned that everyone suffers, but it isn't for me to decide how people should get over their pain. However, eventually, we will all learn. This was very puzzling. Aside from Naruto's new appearance, he felt much stronger than he was at the cage summit. And his way of speaking and the look on his face, it was all empty of any emotion, yet it felt natural. She did not understand how, but even if it could be classified as emotionless, it would be right for him to speak in that manner. It felt natural for him to speak in such a manner. It took you 20 miserable years of putting a shame to your grandfather's name and the senju for you to realize your faults. The tone was still smooth, never changing in pitch, words just seeped out of his mouth. Tsunade somewhat glared at him, but he was still not looking at her, he was not looking at anyone for that matter. At least I changed, unlike some people. She regretted those words after they escaped her lips. The villagers have yet to change. Jiraiya decided to butt in within the conversation between the two. What gives you the right to redeem this village and how exactly do you plan to redeem Konoha? The Toad Sage demanded with narrowed eyes. Kami has his ways, Naruto simply responded. I am a force of nature. I am Kami who brings justice and order to this world. There were several snorts from the Anbis when Naruto called himself Kami. You are certainly strong, but you must have flipped to call yourself Kami. A few rounds of nods followed. Is this because of what the village did to you, Naruto? Is this some sort of revenge? Yugao finally got her voice to ask. Naruto then turned to face her. He regarded her for a few moments before he responded. Kami has no such emotions as revenge. But Naruto entertained such thoughts before. There is only redemption. A part of me has lived in this village long enough to know what happens in the darkness. For years I waited patiently, thinking you would change, but you have not changed, and my patience with you has waned. Why don't you just leave it alone if you have no thoughts of revenge? Jiraiya questioned, working for possible ways they could deal with all these without fighting Naruto. Kami cannot do that, Naruto responded smoothly. Out of any other village, I have studied this one thoroughly. There is so much evil that disgusts me. I must redeem you, or else one of these days, I will turn everything, including you people to ashes. The atmosphere became tense, eyes narrowed, weapons ready for battle. We cannot allow you do as you please. Tsunade stated with a dangerous tone. And such words can be interpreted as a threat to the safety of Konoha. We don't take threats kindly. I do not make threats, Tsunade. This will happen, whether you like it or not. You can say I am wrong, and I can say I right. Let us look at this. When someone threatens you, you deal with them. When someone wrongs you, you deal with it. At my end, Konoha is evil, my will is to deal with that. That is a pathetic excuse for seeking destruction, Jiraiya stated, idly, still narrowed eyes at Naruto. You misunderstand, human. I find no joy in destroying vile creatures before my sight. You may all be alive after everything, Naruto revealed. However, some of you will wish you were dead. That is reassuring, someone from the group of Anbu stated, sarcastically. But Tsunade had different thoughts. I don't know whether you are telling the truth or not, and I don't care for your reasons. There is only one thing to say to you, whatever plans you have, we reject them. Naruto said nothing for a moment. Reject this, Tsunade. He hit the ground with his staff and the whole village began to shake, causing panic all over. Right before their eyes, a large wall sprouted from the ground, just beside the normal wall of the village. The new wall formed until it was about 6 times bigger than the normal wall. Tsunade did not ask anything, she snapped her fingers. All the Anbu charged straight at Naruto, but he disappeared in a blur. All eyes became wide when he appeared behind the Godime Hokage. Tsunade was quick enough to react. She spun around and attempted to punch him. But he disappeared again, appearing behind Yugao. Naruto would say, it was lovely seeing you again, but Yugao got the rest of the message. She said nothing though. Naruto appeared above the village, overseeing the chaos that has started because of the wall he had brought out. No one could reach him from here. Konoha was also colored with darkness, the new wall had blocked the sun from giving them its light. Naruto held a single-hand seal. Tengai Shinsei. The thing that brought dread to everyone was the thing that began to emerge above Naruto. The meteorite that Naruto had pulled was big enough to crush the whole village under his weight. Panic spread out like wildfire. Until everyone returns, this thing will keep falling down, second by second. But it will not reach you until I say so. You cannot escape this prison. Until everyone returns, I will either return or this thing will crush all of you. His voice was heard by everyone. Do you think you will get away with this, Naruto? The 5 great villages will unite and rid of you. Stop this nonsense before you make things worse than they are already. If you do this, you will have nowhere to hide. You will be hunted for the rest of your life. Tsunade yelled, looking above her at him. Naruto fell down the ground like he had been thrown. He went on his feet and his landing created a resounding boom. Fighting with Kami is futile. You of the great villages are no threats. You can't do anything to me, you are just humans. And the chakra that makes you feel proud belongs to me. He paused for a moment. Attack me, and I will show you. Tsunade did not wait for a second invitation despite Jiraiya's warnings. The Hokage rocketed towards the blonde with the intent of breaking all his bones. The Godime only hit the ground and Naruto appeared behind her, very dangerously close. The moment your muscles contacted in preparation for movement, your head would have been rolling on the ground. Tsunade didn't move a muscle. She couldn't. Her chakra was gone. Now then, I have already wasted my words. He was gone after that and Tsunade felt her chakra return. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya. What have Kushina and Minato brought to this word? What do you mean Haim? He is a monster, Tsunade stated before shaking her head. For now, let us focus on restoring calm in the village and call a council meeting so that we can discuss our next move. Calming everyone will be difficult, especially with that thing. Kakashi finally spoke, looking up. Even if he wanted to use Kamui to send the thing away, he did not have the chakra to do so. What are you trying to achieve, Naruto? Yugao thought. Later that day, this is just unbelievable. Sasuke yelled in frustration. Ever since returning to Konoha, he has been trying to break through the damn wall that Naruto put. There was no way out of it. Each kind of jutsu didn't work. Hell, he even tried Amaterasu and it still did not work. If that wasn't enough to shatter his hopes, he tried slicing the wall with his perfect Susanoo and that still didn't work. The problem was not the wall itself really, it was the barrier that was placed on the wall. To the naked eye, it was invincible, but to his Sharingan it was not. He tried copying the markings around the walls to see if Jiraiya could understand what type of seal Naruto had used. But he couldn't copy it, and that was just impossible. However, considering that it was Naruto who had put it, he really shouldn't be surprised. There was no way of leaving the village, even if you tried reverse summoning, it would not work. Teleporting outside also did not work. The barrier only allowed things to come in, but never allows them to leave. He had tried with many to break it, but there was no way to break it. They were all stuck inside the village with a giant rock from outer space lingering around them. The scariest part was that it was coming down in a slow pace. He knew for certain that if there was nothing that was done soon, it would eventually reach the village. And there was no way to escape from it. Naruto had placed them in a corner and sent a grinder towards them. It was very frustrating since you could even wish for it to hurry up and kill you already. Uchiha-sama, the council wishes to speak with you, and Anbu stated, after appearing behind the frustrated Uchiha. Sasuke did not respond in words, he just disappeared in a flash towards the council chambers. Once there, Tsunade spoke. We have been waiting for you, she stated. I was just called a few seconds ago, Sasuke responded with a raised brow as he took a seat. She made it sound like he had been late for the meeting. And that was not the case. I know, Tsunade responded, with a shrug. Well anyway, I am happy that you survived. After Kami showed up here, I thought he had killed you. He also did not respond when asked where you were. So it is a relief to see you alive. Kami was stated in mild sarcasm that was not missed by anyone. Sasuke shook his head. Naruto did not kill me. In fact, after the battle, he ignored me somewhat. But he did kill Madara. Well, that is at least some good news. But it won't matter if that thing stays in the sky. I mean the villagers are losing their minds out there. I just hope that everyone returns quickly. Inoichi stated, clearly unsettled by everything that has happened. This has certainly been a good way to start the new year, Jiraiya stated, mild sarcasm dripping from his tone. This seemed to be a good day for sarcasm. Perhaps it was the frustrations that attracted the mild language. We have to figure a way to break the wall and do something about the thing. We are imploring the possibilities of using Kakashi's ability to send it away or at least some parts of it. Tsunade stated to everyone, it was best to get to the main issue. If we are able to even send P away with half of it, we will be able to reduce the causalities, but it may come at the cost of Kakashi. Sending something of that size away requires large amounts of chakra, Jiraiya added. Losing his sarcasm, he adopted a serious expression. How fast can Kakashi work on it? I don't think that thing will stay in there forever. There is a possibility that it may just drop on us during the night. Chusa stated, a bit fearful at the thought. No one will certainly sleep with the thing falling down on us. Every second you feel the need to check if it's closer or not, Sum stated, going off topic. But that was the truth. How could anyone sleep in a situation like this? Tsunade cleared her throat. Let us not stray out of topic, he stated. She also had much complaints and much thoughts about the matter, but they needed to stay on the subject on hand. I don't know when he will attempt it. But Shizune is currently doing some researching to see if we can do something that will help in increasing his chakra levels, even if it is dangerous enough to be considered kenjutsu. No one could really disagree on that one. This was the time they could even allow human experiments on the village. As long as in the end it can save some lives instead of everything being lost. What of Yamato? Can't his Mokuden be useful? Shukaku shook his head silently, and spoke for the first time. I highly doubt it will work. Yamato's use of Mokuden is not even at Naruto's level. He can't do anything that will hold that thing for a minute. That is troublesome, Sum stated with a defeated sigh. Then, how are we going to do this if Kakashi fails? That was something that Tsunade had not thought of. She was thinking that it would work. I had not thought of that, Tsunade admitted quietly. We have to think about possible solutions, because you cannot ignore the fact that Naruto used to live amongst us, he knows about Kakashi's ability. Don't you think he would have taken measures to prevent that from happening? The voice of Shukaku sent the room into tense silence. It is a possibility, but we will try it nonetheless, Tsunade stated in a firm tone. But that does not mean that we won't try any available options. Sasuke finally spoke. You people don't get it, do you? After failing to break the wall, he'd realized something. He'd thought of it when he saw the wall Naruto had put. His failure to take it down only confirmed his belief. If you have something you know, say it Uchiha, Hiashi stated looking straight at the remaining Uchiha in Konoha. I will excuse the fact that you just spat my clan's name, Sasuke responded coolly, looking at the Hyuga with a calm look on his face. Regardless of how we try to free ourselves, nothing will work. If Naruto wanted to destroy this village, he would have destroyed when he came here, believe me. I have seen some extent of his power. Can you tell us more about his power, Sasuke? Shikaku asked nicely. He is a monster, Tsunade stated. That was what she could say about it. Sasuke nodded in agreement to Tsunade's words. He is a monster, he repeated the Hokage's words. Even though both Madara and I received power for the Sage of Six Paths, it was not easy to defeat him. Madara had much power to defeat all the Kages single-handedly, without even using his full power. With my perfect Susanoo, I would wipe out an army with 2 swings only. We faced him when he was in a weakened state. His body appeared to be weak, and he was not at full power. The only time we ever seemed to do some damages was when both of us were using our perfect Susanoos. There were times where it looked like we would not win. We could pummel him to the ground and he would just stand up like nothing ever happened. Our first assault on him would have killed anyone. But it did not kill him. Jiraiya, you know how powerful the swing of my Susanoo's blade is. Naruto was able to block a swing from Madara's blade. Mind you, Madara's swing was stronger than mine. He even caught an arrow short by my Susanoo with his hands. There was even a point where he had an upper hand even when going against 2 perfect Susanoos, and he was not even using his own Susanoo. Sasuke shook his head before continuing. At this point, no one in this world can defeat him. It is impossible unless he allows it. He has all the Jubi inside his body. He is not its Jinchuriki, but it is part of him, it is him. And I tell you, the Kyuubi is a fly compared to the Jubi. There was silence for a few minutes before Shikaku finally responded. What is this Jubi? During the age of the 6 paths, there was a beast called the 10 tails. It would have destroyed the whole world if the sage had not defeated it. The sage sealed the jubi inside of him after defeating it. But during his old age, he realized that if he died, the jubi would be free and would eventually destroy the world. So he separated the jubi's power into 9 beasts, the tailed beast, and sealed the jubi's body in the moon. The tailed beasts were mere fractions of power from the jubi. Even the 9 tails' power is nothing compared to the jubi. Madara said Naruto combined the 9 bijuus again so that there would no longer be a Jinchuriki. Considering how people deal with Jinchurikis, I can't say that I blame him for doing it. Sasuke then stood up. I am going home to get some sleep. I am really tired, he said. If you are wondering how I can sleep, it is because I know that until Naruto returns, that thing won't reach the village. How can you be so confident about that? Inoichi questioned. He only earned a blank look from Sasuke, before the Uchiha disappeared. This is Naruto we are talking about. If everyone was going to die, he would have said so. And if everyone was going to die, everyone would die, period. I believe that is what Sasuke meant by the blank expression, Shikaku stated. So, are we supposed to sit back and wait for him to return? Even though Naruto says it's not revenge, I think he wants this village to experience what he experienced. We are trapped in our own homes, there is a large rock above us. We know it's falling down to crash on us. We will try to escape, but all attempts will prove futile, and we will lose all hope. When that happens, we will simply wait upon death. Do you not see the irony in that? Shikaku questioned as he too stood up on his feet. I am the Jonin commander, so I will be out there trying to calm everyone down. I will wait for your results on the Kakashi matter, Tsunade-sama. Uchiha compound Sasuke never got the sleep he was looking for as Kakashi appeared before him. Yo. This is not really a good time, Kakashi. I am just coming back from a battle with Naruto, and I am lucky he did not want pay back what dislocating his shoulder and destroying some parts of his palace, Sasuke responded, stopping at the roof of his room. Don't be like that, Sasuke, Kakashi responded in that tone of nonchalance that annoyed Sasuke. You must have had a really good fight if you were able to dislocate his shoulder, that does not happen often. I know, Sasuke nodded. If it was not for his regenerative powers, we could have won. If you give him chance to recover, he will. But at least I am alive. Madara was killed in just one swoop. The blonde did not even sweat to kill the notorious Uchiha, but that may be because the man did not put a fight. You really had him on the ropes, huh? Yay, but only because he was weakened after something, I'm not told of, Madara did to him. But now it is no longer the same. Kakashi nodded. You are a lot calmer even with that thing. So are you, Sasuke responded with a shrug. I have no reason to be fearful. I have done nothing to Naruto that deems me necessary to be killed. There are also 2 people that Naruto would not kill, Yugao and Ayame. So as long as one of those people remains under that thing, it won't hit the village. Yugao should be fine, I don't know about Ayame. Sasuke said. Ayame is not in the village. I think Naruto took her away. Her father is still around though. But he does not appear to be too concerned about anything. He would have taken Yugao too, but I think he left her behind as assurance for people like us. But then again, I could be wrong. Why Ayame? Don't tell anyone, but Yugao and I believe that she is the person Naruto cares for more than anyone. Kakashi responded with a sad-eye smile. Sasuke merely nodded, he could guess why they think that way. What did you mean by people like us? Do you really think that Naruto would make everyone suffer just because some people made him suffer? Not everyone else was involved in his suffering, and I know that Naruto is aware of this fact. So if he is planning revenge, he won't involve those who did nothing to him, Kakashi explained lightly. Yay, I just tried to kill him. Don't worry. If Naruto wanted you dead, he would have killed you already, Kakashi said in a confident tone. I think this is also a test. He said he was just setting the stage. So this is the stage, and that it was not revenge he was after. Shinobi like you and I, what do we do after hearing those words? We have lived with him long enough to come to a conclusion. A test. Kakashi nodded. Trust, and understanding, the Jonin stated simply hoping that Sasuke would understand. January 5 everyone else in the elemental nations had heard what had happened to Konoha, or at least what was about to happen. Many had even got near the village to take some pictures. Seeing the village locked up in a prison in a large space rock hovering above it was not something that they see daily. There had never been such a thing that happened like this before, this was surely going to go down to history. But this also kept some fear as to what was going to happen to Konoha and who might have done it. The only thought was Uchiha Naruto. He had been rumored to be able to pull about meteorites from the heavens and this could be his doing. There was little doubt that it was his actions to result in such a state to Konoha. The only good this brought was that everyone became in a standstill, waiting for something to eventually occur. But some who did not like Konoha, wished for that thing to drop and kill everyone. No one could do anything though. The people of Konoha had stopped running about in fear a few days ago when they realized that it was not going to change anything. And anything that their leaders had to stop that thing was not working. There was even more shock when they realized that, after their attempts to stop it, another one appeared onto of the first one. But that still did not change the fact that thing was falling down or they were hopeless. There was no way out of the village even when they tried digging themselves out of the village, they still could not escape. It became obvious to them that Naruto did not want them to escape. On the 5th of January, Naruto finally appeared at Konoha. The first person he appeared to was the Godime Hokage. He found her in a delicate position with Jiraiya. Whatever they were planning on doing did not matter to him, he cared less for it really. Tsunade quickly took notice of him, and her Anbu were already at him. They did not sense his presence, despite his overwhelming power. They only took notice of him when he finally appeared within the office. A blade was dangerously licking his neck, another was pressed against his back, just about his waist, the person was obviously aiming for his spinal cord. Another was at his belly, ready to spill out his guts. Kami-sama has finally decided to grace us with his presence after ensuring that he made us suffer long enough that it was no longer amusing for him to watch. The sarcasm was barely hidden and clearly evident within the glint in her eyes. Has Kami-sama finally decided to free us from his reign? The smell of alcohol. You are drunk. Distasteful. I did attempt to teach you about proper leadership qualities, and I believe I touched about drinking on duty. Have you forgotten about that, woman? The sage never minded about the swords pointed straight at him, even though it looked like he was going to have his head chopped off if he made one wrong move. Watch your tongue, vermin, the Anbu behind him warned in a threatening tone. But Naruto merely narrowed his eyes at the human behind before looking back at Tsunade. Normally, he would not have commented on such pitiful attempt to rile him up. But calling him vermin was just thing, it was just blasphemy towards Kami. Naturally, blasphemy is unforgivable. Although I feel no anger, nothing whatsoever from such words, I will not allow any human to commit such blasphemy in my presence. There was no hint of anger or anything his tone, everything was just natural. You called Naruto such words, but calling Kami that word is punishable with death, nothing less. The Anbu snorted. You have to leave here alive to be able to do that. And if you are Kami, why are you even caught in this situation? What situation? His expression never changed, and he asked through there were no three swords pressing against his body. You mean these knives pointing at me? Do you actually think that the omnipresent sage is afraid of such toys? They can't even pierce my skin. Would you like to test that? Naruto did not respond, he was not here for mundane talk. I have wasted time coming here. You are all foolish children. Tsunade, Jiraiya, I had hoped that you would not gaze at the red moon, but it appears that you will have to. Do you think we are just going to allow you to do as you please? Jiraiya questioned in a stern tone, speaking for the first time since Naruto appeared. Last time you may have caught us unprepared, but this time we are prepared. We won't let you leave. Naruto phased past the Anbus surrounding him as though he had become intangible. He continued walking until he phased through Tsunade before standing behind her chair. You can't do anything. And besides, I was never here to begin with. What do you mean? Tsunade questioned, twisting around to face the sage. How could he say he was not here while he was right before her eyes? He was even talking to her. Allow me to rephrase my words, I'm here and at the same time, I am. At my palace. I believe that is what it means to be omnipresent. With that leaving his mouth, Naruto disappeared from the office. The Anbu who had called him vermin also disappeared. Tsunade did not need a second invitation to leave her office in a hurry. Jiraiya also followed her from behind along with her Anbu. When they appeared outside, they realized that it was dark. The darkness was brought by the space rock and the black clouds that were about it. Naruto looked at the village of Konoha with a neutral look on his face. He was not going to enjoy doing what he would be doing. It was not for his amusement or anything. But this had to be done. He would make them feel the pain he felt, but that would be revenge. He had no desires in him. But that did not mean he was not going to make this village understand. His eye was reflected upon the rock above the village. He was making it act as a replacement to the moon. The whole village was at a standstill. He could do anything. Naruto teleported the untainted people away from the village. It would be unfair for him to punish the innocents for the crimes they didn't commit. He was all about fairness, and since he wishes to teach Konoha what was fair, it would seem hypocritical for him to teach others to be fair while he couldn't do that. The remaining were the tainted who needed cleansing. They were filthy creatures that made his sight sore. Do you hate me for blocking the sun? Do you hate me for making you fearful for 4 nights? Do you hate me for making you feel hopeless? Do you hate me for all these that I have done? His voice was clearly heard by everyone. They were in his world after all. And each one of them who heard his voice responded with a glaring and venomous, yes. They hated him for doing what he did to them. No one was allowed to put them in that kind of situation without getting punished. You bastard, you will pay for this. We will make you pay for all these that you have done. We were right all along to call you a demon. Only a demon can bring such dread to this peaceful village our Shodai Hokage founded. Our beloved Yondaime died fighting for this village, but you, at this point, we are certain you are not his son. We should have just killed him long ago. The villagers, civilians and shinobi alike had all gathered around into one place. They all stood together staring up at the small figure of Naruto. From down where they were, the sage was a little bit small. They could all yell and scream what they wished, but they could not reach him. Hashirama is not the only one to have founded this village, you ignorant fools. Uchiha Madara also founded Konoha, and he is the one who named it. But you have violated this land with your distasteful actions. His tone was still calm and neutral, no sense of anger from all that they had said. Don't talk about the traitor before us. You are just like him, a filthy disgusting traitor. You are the one who is evil and the one who should just die. Their voices were united. Well, the reason they were even here means that they had something in common. Why don't you come down here so we can give you the beatings we gave you when you were still a little bitch? I would rather not, Naruto responded after a few moments. You are filthy humans and your breath is unbearable. You have polluted the air below and I wish not to be diluted by it. It was all said in a calm tone. It certainly did not seem like he had just insulted them. Ungrateful little bastard. We allowed you to live amongst us and this is how you thank us. Murmurs of agreement followed suit. I should begin this before I start a debate with these fools, Naruto said to himself before the moon shone in crimson. Everything set, he spoke to the fools again. You disgusting creatures, experience all this, and answer me this simple question. Do you wish to take revenge, or will you do nothing? A 5-year-old boy was running around the village, dread coursing through his body in huge waves that forced his heart to pummel his rib cage with so much vigor that he felt it would soon explode into a blissful shower of blood. Behind him were predators, running with malicious grins that graced their lips with disgusting glory. His small feet bounced off the earth in quick movement. He ran as fast as his feet could carry him. But with each bounce, his energy was disappearing. His eyes were wide in fear, and his hands were shaking violently. Cold sweat ran through his spine, raising chills of fear into his body. The fear turned into horror when he reached a dark alley. It was always like this. Every time he ran, he always ended up in an alley. All hope he had quickly disappeared in the blink of an eye. No traces of it left. The only thing he could do was beg. Please don't hurt me. I won't do anything bad. I promise. I will be a good boy. Just don't hurt me, please. Cold tears ran freely from his eyes. They left as though they were being chased out of his body. Don't even pretend, demon. Hateful sneers and even more malicious intent were thrown at him. It hit him like a heavy wave of heat that dragged him down, forcing his body to produce more sweat. Please, he tried again to beg, but a foot crashed into his gut. When that happened, he knew more pain was coming. Shut up, demon. The words were said with so much venom that it pierced through his heart, making it beat even faster. Enough of this. Let us just get over this before the Sandaime comes. Nods of agreement were thrown and the mob surrounded him. Stop. Please, please, stop. Please. There was no stopping. More pain followed until his young body could no longer take it. The event happened, again and again. Each of the villagers experienced all these and the question came while they were still within the genjutsu. The pain they felt was real, and so were the experiences. Not a single one of them responded did not want revenge for all they went through. After hearing their answers, Naruto broke the genjutsu, but the pain was still engraved within their memories. They felt what he felt. When they realized what had happened, they were even more furious with Naruto. That bastard. He put us all in a genjutsu and made us experience what he experienced. One villager chuckled bitterly. Perhaps we deserved it. I never thought that he experienced so much pain from our actions. We only most our loved ones, but he had it worse. He had felt it, all thoughts that went through Naruto's head when they abused him. It was sad, really. But there was nothing he could do to atone for his sins. Do you dare say that? Our home was almost destroyed because of him and our loved ones died because of him. Do you wish to say that we had no right to do what we did? Don't make me laugh. The pain was nothing to him. You feel no remorse for your actions, in fact you are proud of it. Despicable. Naruto finally spoke before they could kill each other. I gave you Naruto's heart thinking that you may perhaps understand, but you still have not. The only thing there is to understand is that you continue to cause us pain. Even now we feel pain because of you. I see, so you wish to kill Naruto for all he's done, they nodded firmly. Should I also kill you for what you did? Despite your sheer ignorance, you know it deep inside your heart that Naruto was not the Kyuubi and that he was innocent in all these. He was a victim as much as you were, but you still did what you did. There was something in the tone Naruto used that made it impossible for them to deny what he had said. They had experienced what he had experienced after all. It was like he had forcefully brought that knowledge that Naruto was innocent into the surface so they could not ignore it. You all know you did wrong and yet you still refuse to acknowledge it. You would rather kill me and justify your actions by your pain than to acknowledge that you were indeed wrong and I was right. They still said nothing. When I put you in Naruto's shoes, you wished revenge. So you should not make any complaints if he also wishes revenge. If you kill others, you must also be prepared to be killed. Do what you wish others to do for you, isn't that fair? If you wish to destroy me, you should not complain if I wish to destroy you. Kami has no thoughts for revenge. But it is Naruto's will that Konoha burns. No one will ever live in this village ever again. It shall become a symbol of your sins. You bastard. One finally managed to find his voice, but Naruto ignored it. The sage held a single hand seal as Konoha began to shake. Mokuton. Deep forest bloom. The large forest sprouted from the ground and surrounded the whole village. He had to admit, it took a lot of chakra to get it done. Everyone within the village was trapped within the forest. Fire style. Majestic flame destroyer. That was not all that Naruto did. One of his truth-seeking balls sped down the village and exploded in the center of Konoha. Boom. Igniting with the gas the blooming forest produced, the majestic flames turned the village into hell. Naruto was not done though. He blurred out of sight as the screams of agony from the villagers invaded his hearing. He appeared above the moon, and allowed it to drop on the villagers to end their misery. Boom. The whole of Konoha was crushed and the shockwave created by the fall of the meteorite broke the large wall Naruto had created. Large amounts of debris picked up into the sky and when it finally cleared, there was nothing but rumbles and a few remainders of his Mokuton jutsu. The sage brought out all bodies to the surface before performing the Rinne Tensai to revive everyone. He did not wait for them to get over their shock. You still disgust me, he said. Yet there was no trace of disdain or disgust in his tone or face. If you wish to loathe me, you are free to do so. But know that there is nothing you can do. Yes, you will be miserable until death claims your heads. You will live hating me, you will wish to destroy me that it hurts, you will call for your allies to help you, but no one will come to your rescue. You will seek refuge in other villages, but I will mark you with a cursed seal so that no one accepts you. If I find you trying to rebuild this village, I will send you all to hell. He was gone after that. He did not even look back at the look on their faces. They knew that they had died, and yet they were now alive. He did not allow their bodies to burn completely so that he could revive them. The memories they experienced would not leave them, they would die with them. Iwa how a single man could destroy a whole village like Konoha was just beyond Onoki. He's seen so many strong men, so many powerful shinobi who could make the world tremble under their feet, but he's never come to know anyone like Uchiha Naruto. There were shinobi who were powerful enough to be renowned as gods of shinobi. Naruto wasn't a god of shinobi, he was just a demon of shinobi. He'd not viewed exactly how things went down in Konoha, but Naruto had become a man who couldn't be defeated by anything normal. If they were going to deal with him, the only chance was to seal him. Seeking to trample over him was nothing more than a fantasy that they would all perish trying to make real. He'd come to understand that there were just powers that were beyond them. Because things have dragged into this corner that seems to have no escape holes, Fuinjutsu would be the only option. They couldn't defeat Bijouus or even kill them, but they could still seal them despite their overwhelming power. Nothing could beat Fuinjutsu after all. The reason he'd gone to process such thoughts were because Naruto had destroyed Konoha, and there was nothing that was stopping him from doing the same to them. He couldn't wait for such a thing to occur. The only game he could play at this time was to get them before they could get him. Onoki looked up to his door when his granddaughter walked into the office with a rather serious expression on her face. He could only guess that she'd heard of what has happened to the Leaf Village. He was expecting her to beg him to do something about the matter before the Emperor of the Imperial Kingdom set his sights to their village. You've heard of what happened to Konoha, huh? Onoki asked in a low whisper, solemn look passing through his face for a moment, before it shifted to a rather neutral look. Kuretsuchi nodded as she sat down. I doubt there hasn't been anyone who hasn't heard of what happened to Konoha. More people who aren't allies of the Emperor are probably cowering in fear about this time with the news. Konoha wasn't just any village. No, it was the strongest hidden village within the elemental nations. It has boasted the finest shinobi over the years, and the Emperor himself was from the village. To be able to beat the village to its knees was something that even the infamous Orochimaru failed to do. The Emperor did it, and word from Konoha said he wasn't even trying. The fall from glory of a great village such as Konoha wouldn't be something that takes time to reach the other villages. No doubt panic was going to catch most like a wildfire. If something wasn't done quickly, the elemental nations would become unstable and more fireworks, bloodshed would surely follow suit. Kuretsuchi could only hope that people don't lose their minds and start to kill each other because of the thought that they are going to die anyway. If something like that happened, she dreaded for the future of Iwagakure. She cared less for any other village, her main priority was the safety of this village she loved so much and would do anything to ensure its safety. Onoki nodded in agreement. I wonder what the others are thinking about this matter. And what they'll do after thinking, the Sandaime Tsuchikage said in thought. He wondered if the others had the same thoughts as he did. If so, then it would make things easy for him to enact the sealing plan as he thought it was the only solution to deal with the Emperor. He could convince Tsunade and I to follow the same path as him if they had not thought of it. I would agree, and he thought Tsunade would do the same, she had nothing to lose after all. Konoha was already down. What are you thinking of doing about the matter? Kuretsuchi asked, looking at her grandfather intensively. She recalled what that messenger said to her. He informed her that she would know the Emperor's power. And now, she has known much more about it. The question that was left was what was she going to do about it? He is too powerful to think of defeating in battle. The only option is developing a seal that will contain him. So, you are still intent on going after him, Kuretsuchi sighed deeply before continuing. I don't need to remind you what will happen if you fail. Onoki quirked an eyebrow. When did you grow up? She was oddly calm about the matter and wasn't asking him to give her an order to march over to the borders of the Imperial Kingdom. Kuretsuchi rolled her eyes at the question. Last night, she said sarcastically. Aside from stealing our bijoues, what has the Emperor done to our village that threatens its peace? What are you getting at? Onoki queried with narrowed eyes. He already knew the answer to the question, he just wasn't going to answer it. Let us try to solve things diplomatically this time. I'm sure we can work something out. The Emperor has no reason to attack us, and he isn't that hungry for destruction that he goes about destroying villages for the sake of it. You and I both know this, Kuretsuchi responded calmly. Naruto may be many things, but what was certain was that he wasn't obsessed with destruction and didn't enjoy the sound of agony invading his ears. He has been powerful enough to do anything he likes for some time now, and he's never done anything to be considered evil. He always seems to have a reason to do things. If Kuretsuchi was going by what the man said to her, then she could say that he meant no harm to Iwagakure. However, she had also been made to know that if Iwagakure was to try something, then what happened to Konoha would also happen to them. If the emperor was obsessed with destruction, he wouldn't have sent his messenger to her. Are you saying that we should cower and run to that man asking for forgiveness? If so, then I will not do something like that. I'm not suggesting anything of that sort, Kuretsuchi responded calmly. I love this village just as much as you do, and I also have my pride. However, I will not do anything that will put this village in danger just for the sake of my ego and pride. I suggest you do the same, old man. Her tone was a bit stern. It made Onoki feel like he was being lectured. You know very well that even if you succeed in sealing him, our military forces will be thinned down drastically and we will still have Kiri, Suna, the Imperial Kingdom as well as other allies of the Emperor to deal with. Do you think we will get out of that situation alive? Onoki gritted his teeth. He knew these all too well. Perhaps he understood it even better than Kuretsuchi. However, he just couldn't allow things to go as they were. It was indeed true the only wrong Naruto did against their village was stealing their bijoues, but he was just too damn powerful, it scared him. What do you want, Kuretsuchi? Give me a chance to talk to the Emperor. If you don't like what he says after I talk to him, then you can continue plotting whatever it is that you think is the best option there is to deal with the problem. I'm only talking to him. What is it that we lose just by talking to him? Fine. Do as you like. Chapter 40. May believed that there was some good in Naruto. She'd tested it a few times and truly believed that there was some good in him. He didn't like evil and was its enemy. However, at the same time he just couldn't be called a friend of the weak and justice. If anything, he seemed to be far more interested in his own little plans than anything. She had not thought that he would go as far as to destroy Konoha like that. Even though everyone within the village was still alive, she didn't think he would go that far. He didn't seem to be interested in destroying the village when she talked to him, and he didn't seem to be the type to seek revenge, but he'd done it. Konoha had been destroyed. The Mizukage hadn't wasted time. Once she received the news, she'd quickly left everything and rushed over to the Imperial Kingdom to see Naruto to demand answers. She'd turned a blind eye on whatever that he was planning, but now she realized that she couldn't be ignorant about everything. Yes, she had to know what she had gotten herself into. When she reached the capital, she didn't know how to get to Naruto since not even Gurren had seen him or even his special messenger. May had been even thinking of visiting Kumogakure to see that blonde woman Naruto had been with the other day. She had to speak to him one way or the other. But now she was facing him, he'd finally heard her voice. The Mizukage looked around the throne room for a few moments before she took delicate steps towards the man himself. She wasn't much interested in anything other than speaking to Naruto so he could answer some of her questions. You are rather loud, Naruto stated calmly, his back comfortably leaned back against the throne with the 8 truth-seeking balls floating above the throne. Did you really need to talk to me that much that you'd leave your responsibilities and demand to see me? May didn't stop until she was just a few feet away from the Emperor. She could clearly see him now. He looked much different from before. No, he looked like a new person. Even the mask of expression her wore on his face seemed new. However, it wasn't anything that she appreciated from him. She liked the mask he wore the last time she spoke to him. That Naruto she spoke to was bearable and likable. That Naruto was a decent human who seemed to care for other people's emotions and needs. She liked the warmth he gave her that day. However, this person she was seeing in front of her wasn't giving her anything. In fact, she couldn't sense anything from him, neither emotions nor power. The matter that I needed to discuss with you is of great importance. I couldn't just sit back and watch without questions after what you did. There was no sweet smile from the 5th Mizukage, not even her eyes were filled with warmth. Her expression was just straight in tone, tuned to formality and business. She couldn't afford to be smiling at him at this time. No, she felt a heavy burden on her shoulders, and it would continue to weigh down on her until she got some answers. This matter had to be resolved, or she would consider other options. She couldn't afford to seek after someone who enjoys destroying villages for his own amusement. She was a peace-loving person and peace is what she sought, not destruction. Everyone has questions about this and that. Humans are always questioning everything that is around. They can't accept anything without analyzing it and judging it with their standards. Well, a human is curious species. When there are things that you don't understand, your mind refuses to settle down in favor of trying to solve the puzzle. Your heart gives you no sense of peace until your worries are taken away, Naruto stated in a tone that was just natural to him. We question things because we are alive, and only ignorant people accept things without trying to understand them. I do admit that I've been ignorant in your plans so far. Even though I knew you had some plans, I ignored to question and now I find out that you have destroyed Konoha. I should have never been foolish to keep a blind eye on what you had planned. Mei was shaking her head, her regret clearly evident in her tone. Perhaps if she'd asked when she had the time, she could have stopped the destruction of Konoha. Her own ignorance had been at fault here and she couldn't blame anyone but herself. She'd been acting like a child when with him, but this was just a wake-up call. Yes, if there was any destruction she could stop, she would give in her hand for support. Your ignorance played a part in Konoha's destruction, is that what you assume? Do you think that if you had found out that I planned to clean the village of its rotten state you could have stopped me? Mei was silent for a few moments before she gave a stiff nod. There may have been something that I could have done. I don't favor destruction as means to solve something, unless it is an all-out war. Do not fool yourself, Mei. There is nothing you could have done to stop Konoha's destiny. Kami had decided, and there was no human who was going to stand in the way. Even if we turn back time and replay the part, I'll still do it and nothing you would do would make me stop. Naruto's tone was a bit sharp, raining down on Mei like the sound of a sudden thunderstorm, making her heartbeat become a bit faster. No one could have stopped him from doing what he had chosen, either be Mei, Yugao or perhaps even Ayame. The choice had been made and he had to carry it out. The will of Uchiha Naruto must always be carried out regardless of the circumstances that surround. He'd played every scenario that may have occurred if someone attempted to stop him and the result was always the same. Konoha's destruction or foolish humans who understood his pain, are you saying that if I'd stood in the way you would have removed me? Narrowed eyes bored straight into the black-haired emperor before her. She dared shoot such a question straight at him. And she wanted an answer. She had to know where she stood with him. If he was willing to remove her existence for his own goals, then what worth was she to him? Yes, Naruto gave a simple response. But not in the way you are thinking. Humans, do you always assume the worst picture in anything? He knew what she meant by remove. The woman was thinking death and that was the furthest thing that was away from his mind. Death wouldn't have solved anything. No, it would have just caused problems. What do you mean by that? There is no reason for you to die and my problem was with Konoha. Granted you'd stood in my way, I would have just kicked out of the way and proceed with my way. Whether you hate me or like me about the matter is your choice and I can do nothing but accept it. Regardless, there wouldn't be nothing you can do to change the situation, Naruto explained lightly. Oh, I see, Mei breathed a sigh of relief. Relief. Do you not value your own life, Mei? Do you think that I would have just killed you off the bat because you were in the way? I value my life and know that I have a great role to play in this world. I don't believe you would have killed me, but the thought did arise. I'm human, all scenarios have to be considered for my own sanity, Mei shrugged in the end. While the thought may have aroused in her head, she still believed that he wouldn't go that far as to kill her. Yes, he wouldn't have allowed her to stand in the way, he said to himself. But death wasn't always the answer. Her own death would have caused a major backlash that she was sure Naruto wouldn't want. She was a leader of Kurigakure. If the emperor had killed her then he would have turned into a traitor before to the people of Kiri and they would seek his blood. Gaara wouldn't lie down either. He would surely choose to make some distance to ensure that he didn't suffer the fate as her. Then bring the questions, Naruto said. Why did you do it? I know what Konoha did to you isn't right, but I don't think it was right for you to do it. No, it is not the concept of whether it was right or wrong. The matter is whether it was necessary or not. Naruto had his own country to deal with and he had ensured that it continues to prosper. He should be focusing on that other than seeking revenge for what Konoha did to him. What they did was wrong, Mei understood that, but revenge wasn't the only answer to the problem. This was just going to cause more trouble and panic around the elemental nations. Naturally, she would have had him ignore the village and continue his own life as the emperor of the imperial rice kingdom. If he focused on that, he could have lived his life without more people seeking his head and bearing hatred over him. Now those people could say that their hatred of him was justified. However, Mei knew that Naruto didn't care for what those people thought of him at this present time. There was nothing they could do really. Continuing to hate him would make them miserable, and they would be miserable because if he saw willed, Naruto could even go as far as to walk in their midst and dare them to do something. It was necessary that I do. Whether it be justice or revenge, I did what I did. Those people are just vile creatures that wear the masks of humans and parade around this world. They refuse to accept that they are wrong, and think that only they are right. I was trying to teach them that, but they still refused to acknowledge it. But it doesn't matter, they've learned that evil will reward them with a heavy slap from Kami. What did you gain by doing it, Naruto? Don't you see that this has caused problems to arise? Those humans are still alive, Mizukage. If I wanted destruction and their deaths, they wouldn't be alive, now would they? I left them alive because I only wanted them to understand. If everyone is still alive, why should you complain? A village can always be rebuilt, and it is up to them to decide how they continue to live their miserable lives. I did what I did, to teach them humility. Some of them refused to admit their faults. Hadn't it be for their ignorant response after I had showed them what pain is, perhaps the village wouldn't have been destroyed. Regardless, what is done is done. How others interpret my actions is for their own agenda, Naruto responded with a few words. Mei found it puzzling that he would destroy the village and yet keep everyone alive. If it was revenge, then he would have killed them after making them suffer. Perhaps this was his revenge. They were still alive but facing a daunting task of rebuilding. Without strong allegiances, they would suffer greatly. Was it all that Naruto planned for them? What do you mean by, hadn't it been for their ignorant response, then perhaps the village wouldn't have been destroyed? That is indeed curious. Mei wanted to know if the destruction wasn't premeditated. I gave them an option, accept or wish to destroy me. Their choice was to hate me and wish to kill me in a painful death. So I told them that they shouldn't complain if he did the same to them. They say I wronged them, that is why they wish to kill me. Those people had also wronged me, but my wish wasn't to destroy them, but to teach them a lesson. Is this your fair justice? Yes, Naruto responded without a second thought. Humans with power think they can get away with anything. They do wrong and refuse to acknowledge it because they have power. Yes, the strong think they are always right, but that is far from the truth. Konoha has been the strongest hidden village since its founding. The village has done Mei wrong, they inflicted pain and suffering to others. Yet, they still refused to acknowledge that other people have suffered because of their own actions. They soothe their miserable souls by saying that they too have suffered, and even more so than enemies. Konoha wronged you and refused to acknowledge that they were wrong. Is that why you wished to teach them this lesson? Did you wish for them to accept that everybody suffers and others might have also felt more than they did? Mei threw in a fit of questions straight at the emperor. Yes, Naruto gave a simple response this time. You say the strong abuse their powers, then about you. Mei said. He was the strong one in the ring now and he could do whatever he felt like and there was no one who could do anything about it. Tell me one time I've been unfair. I've been the strong man for some time, and there are a lot of things that I've done. Have you seen me abusing my power and forcing people to kneel before me? Have I done any wrong for anyone to accuse of doing? Naruto's eyes looked straight at the Mizukage as he waited for her response. Mei couldn't say that Naruto has been abusing his powers or done anything unfair. As he made it to be, what he did to Konoha was something that those people would have done to him, so the feeling was mutual. In all his life, Naruto hasn't been a friend of evil, nor has he attacked anyone just for the sake of it. If it is about the bijouist, then he explained it to her and he also didn't kill anyone while at it. Unable to point a finger, Mei said something else. Do you think that you were right to destroy Konoha and do you think that you can't do wrong? If he thought he couldn't do wrong, then there would be serious problems. He could do wrong things and always come up with a reason to justify himself. Humans are incapable of doing what is right always. Every now and then a wrong choice will be made. The important thing is admitting that one was wrong. It becomes a problem when one refuses to accepting that one was wrong. People have pride that they wish to protect by all means, but when someone is wrong, pride has to be swallowed. It is then that people are able to move on. Naruto responded to Mei's first question, but it also covered the first. However, he didn't admit whether he could do wrong or not. He merely stated that humans were incapable of living perfection. What the Mizukage didn't know was that Naruto wasn't human. He'd only given her a response that was fitting for a human. Before Mei could speak, Naruto spoke again. Are you satisfied now, Mei? The black-haired sage asked the woman before him quietly. If possible, he didn't wish to have any misunderstandings with this woman. However, if it couldn't be helped, then it couldn't be helped, he would accept it. Mei became silent as she gathered her thoughts. Yes, he's not done anything that could be considered evil, but she didn't believe that destroying Konoha would solve anything. It was only going to cause more problems for him and the empire. Do you know that those people are going to continue hating you now, and will now hate you more than ever? The only difference is that this time, they will point at the destruction you left in Konoha and justify their hatred towards you. Their hatred of you hasn't been cleaned. No, you've only made it worse. I'm aware of this, Mizukage. I'm not a child who doesn't consider the consequences of his actions. Do you think that? I just woke up one day and decided to destroy Konoha. While their hatred on me still remains, it doesn't affect me the least. I can continue to live my life as I have been, but if they choose to carry on with their hatred, it is them who will be bitter and miserable until they die, Naruto responded calmly. He didn't care if they hated him or not. He made sure they understood his pain and that they knew that if they did wrong, they would be punished. Yes, the destroyed village would always remind them of their sins. They would look at it from far as the result of their injustice. Yes, I know it won't affect you, but this doesn't do the shinobi world any good at all, Mei said shaking her head. Right now the world doesn't know why I destroyed Konoha, but some already suspect the reason why, Naruto said before bringing up something. I should remind you that not everyone was caught in the crossfire. Not everyone was there when I destroyed Konoha. Only trash that refused to admit that it was indeed trash lived the destruction of Konoha. Mei nodded. I'd suspected as much since you speak so much about being fair. Granted you were being fair in all these, I figured that you may not have involved even those who weren't trash. Where are the others? They are in the new village I built for them. I told them exactly what happened. Despite being the one that destroyed Konoha, I told these people before I did what I did that whether Konoha was destroyed relied on the decision of the trash. These good people knew and understood what I meant by that, Naruto stated, knowing that the Mizukage would ask about it. So, if the trash had accepted and admitted that they were wrong, Konoha wouldn't have been destroyed, is that what you're saying? Yes, Naruto responded. I told the good people that before I engaged the trash. Naruto stood up from his throne and walked towards Mei. I'm going to show you new Konoha, and after that, I'll send you to Gaara so you can explain things to him. Do you have a problem with that? Mei shook her head. I understand your actions, but I wish you'd done things differently. If I see this new Konoha, my heart may stop worrying too much and speaking to Gaara will clear my mind, Mei smiled sadly. Thank you, she said. I wasn't sure you'd explain things to me when I came here, and I will admit that I thought you may have done it just for destruction. Speaking to you has cleared some of my thoughts, and has proved something to me about you. What is it? You are not such a bad person, she said. You put them through trials trying to get them to understand your pain. If you were such a bad person, you wouldn't have bothered to try to get them to understand your pain, you would have just outright destroyed them without giving them a chance to repent. Mei was glad that it had turned out like that. It would have troubled her heart if he had turned out to be a cold-hearted person who had no compassion. They had made a good start with the Imperial Council and Naruto had gathered some good people that she was happy to work with. She wanted to continue in that path that they'd started. Naruto looked the woman for a moment before walking past her. I'm glad you have that understanding and have come to that conclusion. So many things and actions are done and said because people lack the right understanding. But when we understand each other, we are able to communicate well and the way forward is paved. He said. Now follow me. Kumogakure in all his life has always been able to solve problems or at least come up with a sound solution to solve all the problems he was faced with. Yes, as the Yondaime Raikage, he had his responsibilities to uphold and to beat up every problem that threatened the safety of his village. His father had left him with the yoke to carry, and so he'd been doing a good job in ensuring the village he so loved was protected and safe. This time, He was presented with a mountain. A mountain he didn't whether it was a stumbling block or something that was put in front of him to block the enemies. I didn't know whether climbing the mountain will bring some things from the other side for him to see. The situation before him was a big puzzle that he didn't even know which piece was to take the first step on the board. Konoha's destruction didn't worry him much, but he was more concerned whether the trail of destruction would also lead to his village. If Naruto could do it in the village he was formerly a shinobi at, what was stopping him from marching towards his own village? Naturally, I was more concerned with the safety of his own village rather than Konoha's state. The state of the former great village was said to be pathetic, and it was unlikely that it would stand where it once stood. His messenger had given him a clear picture of the state of the village. There were only signs of a major battle to have taken place, not a space where a village once stood. I guessed that this was caused by the monstrous meteorite that fell on it. There was also news that the Godime Hokage and many more of the strongest from the village had yet to be seen ever since the village was destroyed. I found it strange that shinobi such as Sasuke, Jiraiya and Kakashi would just disappear like that. It wouldn't be a surprise if Naruto killed because he viewed them as threats. But somehow, I didn't think that they were dead. No, he had a feeling inside his heart that they were still alive. The villagers who'd been left in the wake of destruction of the former great village were said to be moving around the Fire Nation searching for their loved ones and families. He had a rumor that not everyone was present when the village was destroyed. He suspected that to be the case as it would explain the disappearance of the Sanins. A question was brought with this information though: where were they if they were still alive? Those who were left at the destroyed Konoha weren't indulging in many questions about what had actually happened. However, given the little pieces of information he'd received, I had come to the assumption that the destruction of Konoha had something to do with Naruto's life as a Jinchuriki. Perhaps it was revenge for putting him through hell. Granted that to be the case, it eased some of his worries. Sighing, I stood up from behind his desk. The others should be at the training ground for the training they'd been doing in the outskirts of the village. Ever since his embarrassing defeat to Uchiha Madara with the other cages, he'd picked up his training again to improve his speed and overall assault power. His speed and strength seemed to be nothing when facing a man like Madara, and if he was to face Naruto, he would have to improve. The Raikage still didn't know the fate of the notorious Uchiha. He seemed to have just disappeared off the face of the earth. Naruto possibly had all the answers. When I arrived at his private training ground, he found Darui, C, Samui, B and Yugito already in the mix of it. The five of them created a really strong group that was dangerous to any enemy. If it was such a time when the infamous Akatsuki was still running about, he would have this group deal with them. C, being a censor, was quick to notice the Raikage arrive at the training. "We've been waiting for you, Raikage-sama," he said, drawing the attention of the others who in turn looked at the coming muscled man after those words left his mouth. "I was busy at the office," I responded as he reached the group. He stood still in front of them, his eyes pacing between each of them. It seemed that they'd been here for some time now, judging by the sweat all over their bodies. B had expected another response other than the one his brother gave. The tone the Raikage used worried him and it just showed him that the man was being bothered by something. Since they trusted each other here, he decided that to ask what was wrong because he saw no harm. "Something bothering you, brother?" I nodded, looking above the sky. "This issue of Konoha's destruction in Naruto is bothering me. I don't really know what to make of it. I'm still mad at Naruto for taking away the Bijouis, but whether he is a threat that will threaten our safety remains to be seen." B nodded. While he was not the least happy about losing his long-life partner, but he didn't think the Emperor was that bad of a person who would one day come here to destroy their village out of the whim. No, with everything he's heard of the man, he wouldn't do anything like that. Unless threatened, it was unlikely that the Emperor would come here to attack. The fact that he and Yugito had been kept alive meant that there was much more to the man. He's yet to openly threaten Kumo, and during the time he took Hachibi, he said he was only interested in the Bijouis and wasn't interested or looking forward to fight us because of his hunt of the Bijouis. B said quietly. There is also that crap about Bijouis not belonging to anyone and his desire to ensure that no one becomes a Jinchuriki again. He also said something about not wanting Bijouis to be used as weapons and power equalizers within the elemental nations, Yugito said, voicing her own thoughts. With everything that she'd seen, she could say that the Uchiha wasn't going to come into this village with the intention of laying siege upon it. No, she believed that he wouldn't do anything of that kind unless Kumogakure chose to attack him, and Samui believed the same thing. Yugito had a feeling that if it was coming from Samui then it had to be true. Of course, she couldn't say it outright that the emperor wasn't going to come into the village to destroy and that destruction wasn't something that danced around his head joyfully. If anything, he liked to handle matters without destroying things these days unlike back then. Her perception of Naruto was quite different from everyone, and it was at times frustrating that she couldn't do anything tangible to make these others see what she and Samui see in him. I don't really get all that, C said shaking his head. He'd already heard everything that happened when Naruto took the Bijouis, but things were just too complex and rather hard to deal with. He says he doesn't want to trouble us, but his actions are a contrary to that. I nodded, agreeing with C. Regardless of how you look at it and how he puts it, he attacked 2 of my shinobi and took Bijouis that belonged to this village. Even though he brought B and Yugito back to life, the actions cannot be excused. The attack was on Kumo's military force, and with the loss of our Bijouis, our military strength has taken a dip. Even though the emperor of the imperial kingdom may say that Bijouis didn't belong to any of them and it wasn't for them to claim, it was merely a matter of his own opinion. Others before them had fought, and some of them had even died fighting to bring Matabi and Hachibi into the village as their weapons. One man couldn't just take it all away from them, especially when he had a country of his own to lead. I wasn't even sure what he wanted to use the Bijouis for, and there was no telling if he would one day flip and send the Bijouis after them for destruction. Nothing was clear in all these, and the Raikage hated to admit that perhaps talking to Naruto would paint a clear picture for everyone. There are also his actions at the Cage Summit. Darui added these words into the fray. How could he forget? He had been there that day when the Uchiha appeared after the infamous Madara had already made his presence known. I nodded. In any case, we have to be prepared for anything that is to come. If Naruto is to come after us, we will have to be ready to deal with him, and we still don't know what has happened to Madara. Samui sighed as she cleared her thoughts. Naruto had told her he had no interest in a war with both Iwagakure and Kumogakure. However, he'd told her that if it couldn't be helped and if these 2 villages pushed things too far, he would act. Samui knew well how he would act. It was certain destruction. Aside from taking the Bijouis and the incident at the Cage Summit, Naruto hasn't done anything to threaten Kumogakure. He has not said he had problems with us or anything troubling in the past. You must also remember that the incident with the Cages also affected the Cages who are allied with his own country. The same is to be said for the Bijouis. He didn't just take Bijouis from his enemies, he also took Bijouis from his allies. Moreover, there were no deaths in all these incidents. The blonde-haired voiced her own thoughts. I didn't disagree with Samui. I know that, and it makes it a complex situation to handle. However, the Raikage didn't intend to understand Naruto's reasons for attacking his brother and Yugito. No, any attack on his brother was a personal one, even though he, wasn't killed. You'd talked with the Tsuchikage and Konoha about a way to deal with him. What had you discussed then? C asked. The contents of such a meeting weren't revealed to anyone. The Raikage had so far kept everything to himself. The 4th Lightning Shadow sighed. Well, I guess it can't be helped, he said quietly. We decided to gather our top shinobi and combine them with the main purpose of eliminating both Madara and Naruto. You guys were going to be in that group, and Konoha was going to give out Jiraiya, Uchiha Sasuke, Metagai and Hatake Kakashi. But circumstances have changed now. The Konoha team is missing, and even if they were there, Konoha would focus on rebuilding rather than fighting. Granted that they are dead, Kumo and Iwa will need to discuss the matter again. Regardless of how you look at it, the team was considerably strengthened by Konoha's assault team, she reasoned. This is what I've been thinking. But I've not heard anything from Onoki, I said tiredly. This was all giving his mind an overload of thoughts to be processed by the second. This would be clear if Naruto himself was here, Yugito said. However, she was certain that the moment he were to appear, the Raikage was going to pounce on him with the intent of perhaps ending his life. I snorted. I doubt he would show himself here after everything. He's probably hiding in his sky palace. The tone had taken a new turn from tiredness to one mixed with anger and frustrations. As if he'd been there the whole time, Naruto spoke casually, standing on a small rock away from the group. Who would put fear in me that I've to hide myself? You, Konoha, Iwagakure. Do not fool yourself, Raikage. All the eyes turned on him quickly. They'd not even sensed his presence, and the only thing that alerted them of his presence was his voice. Despite the new appearance, I couldn't mistake that voice. It was him, and he didn't need an invitation to lunge at the black-haired sage. His lightning armor was activated in the blink of an eye before he took off. Naruto merely watched as the Raikage lunged at him. It was just predictable, he'd known that the man would attack him once he appeared here. Sighing, Naruto held out his right hand. I drove his right fist straight at the black-haired sage in fast speeds with the intent of shattering his rib cage in one punch. However, Naruto caught the punch with his right hand without even flinching, even though the man appeared in a blur. Before I could retaliate, Naruto's left hand was dangerously close to his neck. He knew a single move. Don't do anything foolish. I've not come here to fight, and besides, in my current power, you all merely children to me. I don't dance with children, I beat them, Naruto said, looking at the group that was with I. They seemed ready to enter the fray, and he didn't want to give them a beating. Let me go, bastard, I growled, glaring at Naruto. He could try to struggle, but the moment Naruto caught his right hand, his mobility shut down, he couldn't even move the slightest, and his lightning armor had just shut down. He could also feel that his chakra was leaving him. Sometimes you act like an immature brat. How foolish of you to attack someone without even thinking. I can kill you right now because of your foolishness. Even these children have grown far better than you, they know when to attack and when not to. But because you've allowed your petty emotions to cloud your thinking, you just lunged at me, or stupid. I felt like he was a 6-year-old child being scolded. And the fact that Naruto was still holding his hand firmly didn't make him feel any better. Without words to say, he merely growled in response. Should I slap you? Should I break your hand or both your legs for this reckless action? Tell me, how should I punish you? Naruto asked quietly, his hold on I tightening by the second. C couldn't believe what his senses were reporting to his brain. The mere report of it was enough to shut down his other senses and bring him down to his knees, his body shaking, and sweat coming out in a heap. His mind found it difficult to comprehend what he had sensed, and it had shut down several times just to make sense of it. It was impossible. Impossible. The power he sensed was enough to fill the whole world, and he still couldn't figure the limits of it. It was like there was no end to it, and I's chakra was like a drop in a sea compared to what Naruto possessed. It was like he was one with nature, because he was everywhere. In a sense, he was right, they were children to him in terms of power. Samui shook her head watching C. She could guess that Naruto's power caused by his senses going haywire after trying to gauge out its limits. There were things that couldn't be measured, and one of them was Naruto's power. He'd told her, aside from the immeasurable chakra he contained, he still controlled all natural chakra. That meant that the chakra that flowed within nature was also part of him. Perhaps this is why he called himself a force of nature. You all right? B asked, placing a hand of comfort on C's right shoulder. The censor recovered well from his blackout and nodded at B but still stayed on the ground. Naruto let go of I's hand. However, he slapped the man straight on his face with his palm. The slap had enough power to send I flying towards his shinobi. Next time I will break your legs if you do something childish like this. You are a cage, fool, start acting like one and you will stop embarrassing yourself in front of your children. Such recklessness is not fitting for a cage. I growled again once he'd regained his composure. It was a little embarrassing being slapped like that and being lectured like this, but he didn't allow it to get to him. What do you want? He demanded in a low growl. First thing first, Naruto responded quietly. One of the 8 balls behind him broke away from formation, and disappeared behind Naruto into the mountain that was behind him. There was no civilization in the area, hence he'd chosen it. After a few moments of silence, a large explosion rocked far behind Naruto where the black ball had disappeared. The large explosion was rather frightening. Despite being far away from them, they still felt its tremors from where they stood. A large cloud of mushroom of debris picked, and I was positive that people back at the village could see it. After a few moments, the greenless mountain that once stood was nowhere to be seen. Even though they couldn't see it, there was a large crater where the mountain once stood. I felt relieved that the explosion didn't set off at his village. The result would have been catastrophic if it had been that way. Naruto never even bothered to look at his handiwork. His gaze settled on the wreckage, before he spoke. I came here to warn you. If I drop 3 of these balls in Kumo, they can turn the village into ash, and it won't even drain me of my chakra. I narrowed his eyes. Are you threatening my village? Naruto shook his head. Interpret it any way you like, but I'm telling you that I have no fight with you. I do not wish to destroy Kumogakure as it has not done anything to me. However, if you push it and continue to seek war with me, if your shinobi enter my country intending to do any form of damage, I will not show mercy. I gritted his teeth and dangerously stared at Naruto. Are using the little explosion to insert fear on us so we can bow before you. Naruto fixed eye look before shaking his head. You are hopeless. You should have learned enough about me to know that I don't throw subtle hints. If I wanted you to get on your knees and become my pet, I would have told you so. However, you have allowed your wild thoughts to picture such an ignorant picture of me. Yes, it is ignorance that makes you say such foolish words. A shinobi rule is that you should know your enemy. You consider me as such, yet you have learned nothing of me. Are you really a cage? I will only tolerate so far of your words, boy. Humans. Naruto shook his head slightly. Must you always assume the worst? The little explosion was just an exhibition to show you little of my power. You are an emotional child that is prone to act rashly when the situation represents itself. If I told you that I'm powerful enough to destroy your village, you wouldn't have believed it. That is why I decided to show you little of my power. You can say that I am using fear to get you under control, then what of it? I'm not ordering you to be my dog, nor have I threatened your village or even killed one of your shinobi. I've only taken bijoues that didn't belong to you to begin with, but you continue to plot for my death. You cannot kill me and I do not wish to kill you nor destroy you. I will repeat this again, I'm merely warning you to stay away from my country. Are those words clear enough to get through your thick skull? I didn't respond. He was too damn seething to say anything, so in turn bespoke. Are you saying that you will not attack our village if we do not attack you, and are you saying that we should just let the fact that you took our bijoues slide without punishment? I will say this, just because you got well with Hachibi doesn't mean that he was yours, just because Kumo captured it doesn't it belong to you. Bijoues didn't belong to humans, and I will not compensate for taking them. I will say it once again, I have no interest in enslaving you people or forcing you to do my bidding, but if you threaten the safety of my country by attacking it, I will do horrible things to you. Naruto turned away from the group. Iwa is sending someone to my country to settle things diplomatically. She will be heard and return back to her village with words that will stop Onoki from doing anything foolish. I've spoken to you, if you don't listen, then I will end you and I will not be repeating my words again. Naruto disappeared after those words left his mouth. What will we do, brother? Killer Bee asked the seething Raikage. The decision I would have taken after this was to gather his forces and march towards the rice to destroy it, but that would not be a rational choice. I'll speak to the council and hear what they have to say, and I will hear what Iwa will do after they receive word from him. Samui sighed tiredly and looked at the heavens. I hope you make a choice that is good for the village, Raikage-sama, she thought. Konoha, to think that Naruto would destroy Konoha and leave it in ruins. No, there wasn't even a trace of their buildings that they had once built over the years. Everything had been crushed under the monstrous meteorite that fell on their old village. The kind of power to single-handedly destroy the entire was something that Tsunade feared. She had never felt so much anger than the anger that rained down on her shoulders when she'd seen the destruction he dished out to the village her grandfather founded. She wasn't the only who was infuriated by what Naruto did. Anger towards the blonde was the mutual feeling they had for the emperor of the Rice Kingdom. Those who had been unlucky to be burned and crushed when he destroyed old Konoha were the ones who held much more anger than others. It wasn't that Tsunade could blame them for feeling the righteous fury they felt. If such things as gods existed, then they would all be down on their knees praying to their god to punish the demon that was in Naruto. Something that would soothe their souls would be watching him die before their eyes. It wasn't everyone who was angry with Naruto. Some of the people who had been left in Konoha weren't so angry with the former blonde Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed demon fox. In fact, they appeared humbled and much calmer than anyone who was seething because of what had happened. Tsunade found it laughable that they'd been forced out of Konoha because Naruto said so. She remembered it well when he told them about it. Flashback: a group of Konoha people gathered around in a bundle looking at the second location they'd been brought to. At first, they were taken away from their beloved home of Konohagakure no Sato, and taken to another dimension. To the non-shinobi, it was just another place. They didn't spend much time there. They were sent to this second place they were now. Those who took runs outside of Konoha walls knew that this wasn't far away from where their village was located. It was no shock or surprise to know who had been teleporting them, and they'd been told that their home was most likely to be destroyed by that man. He told them this with a straight face. Depending on the answers those people who are not with you here give me, I will either destroy Konoha, kill them all, or leave them alone. If I so choose, I can do both, destroy Konoha and kill them, but to be fair I will do one thing. Granted they become what I wish, you will be returned to your home safely. Those were the words that Naruto had told everyone once they had been brought into the other dimension, a place that was just empty of any life form. Of course they'd not been pleased to hear that their home may be destroyed, and some had voiced their thoughts out loud to him. Why are we the only ones here, and why are the others left in the village? Naruto had responded with a simple answer that didn't surprise everyone. Most people had already suspected as much. You are here because you're bearable. Before my sight. Those who've remained in the village are those who are filled with petty hatred towards me and are responsible for my suffering when I was still younger. After those words were spoken, many voiced out their thoughts and worries for their loved ones, and pleas for Naruto to reconsider his options were thrown in the fray, but the emperor had refused to listen to any of it. He'd silenced them with his final words before he disappeared from their presence. Should they die or Konoha be destroyed, it will be because of their answer to me. There is even a chance that I may not kill them or destroy Konoha. This is a chance that will have everyone return to their loved ones and to their homes. Just to be clear, I will tell you this, the reason Konoha will be destroyed is because those people will refuse to acknowledge that what they did was wrong. If you are here and you used to hate me for the Kyuubi, then it means inside of your heart, you've realized that you were wrong to do what you did and were truly sorry. Those that will face judgment are those who refuse to accept that they were wrong. Should Konoha be destroyed, it will be because I showed them my pain and they still refused to understand and admit that they had no right to do what they did. After hearing this, can you say that this is revenge or I am not being fair? Konoha's destruction lies in the hands of those fools who are left behind. It will be their choice that will decide the fate of Konoha. Everyone dreaded for the worst when Naruto spoke those words. They knew that those who still hated him were not going to change, and between admitting their faults and standing firm on their pride, they would choose their pride. Should they do that, that would seal the fate of Konoha, and no one had any doubt that Naruto was serious that he would destroy Konoha. They had two choices if Konoha was to be destroyed: hate Naruto for it or hate those who chose to remain foolish and hold their hatred high above all things. Naruto had left things clear for them to understand clearly. He had the power to destroy Konoha, but wasn't willing to do so. He wasn't after revenge to anyone who wronged him. He just wanted them to understand and admit that they were wrong. If they refused to admit that they were wrong, then he would be forced to destroy Konoha. The ones in Naruto's dimension understood it perfectly that it was wrong to hate Naruto for the Kyuubi, and would also like the others to have the same mindset as they did. However, that didn't mean they agreed with Naruto's methods. What they did come to understand was that it wasn't revenge that Naruto was after, but he just wanted them to admit their faults and learn humility. If it was revenge, then many more people would have been left behind at Konoha. Now, almost half of the village's population was here in this dimension. After minutes of pure dread, they were finally transported to another place, out of the dimension. They were brought to this place, their new village as Naruto called it. Right before their eyes, Naruto leveled the ground, creating a clear ground. A large wall sprouted from the ground and surrounded the clear ground Naruto had created. Everyone just settled for watching him when he moved forward to create a mountain. Right there and then, he created the Hokage monument with the faces of the previous cages. After that, he'd gone to stand in the center of the ground. His hands hit the ground and the earth had shaken at that time. Houses began to sprout from the ground in different sizes and formations. In the outskirts of the village, another forest-like training ground 44 was formed and a few streams of water were formed within the walls of their new village. They'd watched Kami create a village. Right before their eyes in just minutes. If it weren't for the mixed feelings, their awe for his abilities would have been expressed in words. This was just creation at its highest level. The use of Mokuton, earth and Sweden was just at level best. This wasn't the work of a mere mortal, but this was the work of a god. Their awe had stopped them from questioning everything that he was doing. The fact that he was creating a new village meant that either Konoha was destroyed or their fellow villagers were killed by him. But just seeing him work in silence with a concentrated look on his face made them settle for watching him and ask questions later. After he'd completed everything, he'd taken the air to overlook the village he'd created and seemed to marvel at his work. Tsunade had gathered her thoughts after that to question the emperor while she was still grouped with the rest of the villagers who were taken out of Konoha. What is the meaning of this, Naruto? The answer was clearly obvious, but it felt like the right question to ask at that time. There wasn't anything else that the Hokage could think. Everything was just overwhelming her like a flood caused by a tsunami. All this was surprising and shocking, and it put her thoughts into disarray. She wasn't the only who was having complicated thoughts bouncing up and down in her head, others too were facing the same thing. Shikamaru looked at the emperor carefully, he had a feeling that he understood everything too well. The answers were given to him in black and white, and he could see them perfectly. Naruto's earlier words had painted visible picture inside his mind. Anyone who had enough brains to understand those words and his actions could conclude what all these meant. The Nara understood that Naruto had only stayed in Konoha because he'd thought they would change. He hated the villagers, and that wasn't hidden from anyone. What made things worse was that no one was finding the courage to go before him and apologize for what they'd done to him. An apology was the least they could do, and Naruto would have accepted that. But those people still couldn't do that, they refused to admit their wrongs. Shikamaru understood it perfectly. Naruto just wanted them to admit that they were despicable humans who wronged him. By all means, that was righteously true, they were despicable humans who wronged him because of their hatred. Even so, they refused to swallow their pride and admit it. This refusal has led Naruto to do what he did. Perhaps Shikamaru understood the emperor's actions better than anyone inside this village. Because he understood, he held no ill feelings towards him. This is your new home. I built this, for you people. It wouldn't be fair for me to leave you homeless because of the trash I left in the destruction of the old village. Because of no problems with you, I've set aside this land for you. What I've done is enough and I won't do anything more. You still have the riches you had when you were still in the old village. So this means you've destroyed Konoha and the others. Yes, I've destroyed the old Konoha. However, I left the trash alive but it will not find this place. For a week, I'll keep this place locked inside a barrier while you rebuild. No one will know that this new place exists until I remove the barrier. The trash will wander about the world, but it will be rejected everywhere it goes, Naruto stated in a firm tone. Is this your way for apologizing for destroying our home? One of the villagers shouted. Do not mistake me, I'm not sorry for destroying Konoha, I am simply doing this because it is the right thing to do. He turned his back on everyone before saying his last words. The old Konoha will be a memory of sins, should anyone attempt to rebuild, death will come. He left after those words. Flashback and it was truly unthinkable to think that the once great Hidden Leaf village once stood here. Tsunade couldn't believe that she'd failed enough to see the beloved village her grandfather founded to be brought into such a state. It was indeed true, in its current state, they couldn't rebuild anything and that aside, Naruto had given a stern warning. Even with his warning, Tsunade had come to see this village. The barrier that had shielded them was taken up and thus enabled them to leave their new village. She'd first stayed inside to handle things within. Truly, even though they'd been locked inside a barrier, all the needed materials they needed to rebuild were available. Tsunade could guess that they came from their old village. Naruto had said that they still had the riches they had when they were still living inside this former great village. They had settled in well in their new home, but adapting was the biggest issue some were facing. The kids were doing all right though. They didn't seem to mind the new scenery, in fact, they liked it better. She'd seen many kids running about within the new streets looking lively like nothing had happened. With the number of villagers that were under her control within the new Konoha, they'd no problems. However, in a number of weeks their riches would dry out soon and they would suffer if things were not handled strategically and funds weren't attracted to the new village. Things would become bad when they hunt all the others who were within the village when it was destroyed. As Naruto had put it, he'd created the village for the good people, the trash wasn't included in anything. Regardless, Tsunade couldn't abandon them. She'd set up a group of people to search for them within the Fire Country borders, and so far she'd met some of them. The cruel thing was those who were still bitter, had a strange mark on their foreheads and couldn't enter their new village. This reality had hit them hard and made true to Naruto's words when he said that he'd built the new village for the good people. The marks of their forehead weren't visible until they attempted to walk past the new gates. Something like an invisible wall blocked their entry. A Hyuga was brought to study the anomaly, and they discovered that there was a barrier that could not be seen to the naked eye. The barrier lay dormant but became active when the marks on the trash reached its vicinity. Those who didn't have the marks entered the village and were reunited with their families. The decision Tsunade had come up with was that those who couldn't enter the village would be built their homes outside the walls of their new villages, since they couldn't just leave them alone. This choice would enable their families who were inside the new village to move out with them without staying away from the new home. Jiraiya, Kakashi and appeared behind Tsunade on top of the former Hokage monument at the old village. Jiraiya was first to speak. "This is a mess, huh?" Tsunade nodded. "Well, at least we've been doing well so far. But the village will be now divided into two sections, one within the walls and the other outside the walls. As the days continue to pile up, the people within the walls will symbolize the rich and happy while the ones outside the walls will be poor and miserable," Jiraiya said, walking towards the edge of the monument to overlook the former glorious Leaf Village. "No one can be blamed for it. It was their choice that led to this situation. Some villagers who were also part of the destruction were able to return to the new village. This only means that they might have changed. Granted that is the case, then all these others have to do is admit their faults," Sasuke said with indifference. While Naruto was at fault for putting the situation in the first place, those people also had their roles to play in all these. If they'd admitted their faults to begin with, Konoha wouldn't have been destroyed and they wouldn't be dealing with a situation like this. If it was up to Sasuke to decide, he wouldn't have bothered to search for those ignorant fools. He would leave them to suffer their fate until they became humans. That may be so, but we can't leave them to suffer. Even if we can't do everything for them, we can give them a hand. They are still one of us, Kakashi said, looking to no one in particular. Tsunade nodded. In any case, things will turn out just how Jiraiya has said. Things are only going to get worse from now and we will be forced to make a choice between the people inside the walls and the ones outside the wall, the Godime stated in a grim tone. At least our forces are still in their great numbers. Low morale may be the only problem though, Kakashi added. Jiraiya nodded in agreement with Kakashi. That is the case. In any case, I've decided that I'm going to spend my next years teaching the new generation ninjutsu. My generation has become old and in a few years we won't be able to move like we do now. His decision was mainly influenced by what Naruto had said to him, and the Sannin thought it was the best decision to make given everything that has fallen on them. There wasn't much that he could do for their new village, but training its next protectors was the least he could do. He couldn't protect this old village, and he would train the next generation to ensure that they could protect their home and not suffer the same fate as they did. Tsunade smiled at her former teammate. I will be doing the same as you, Jiraiya. While you teach them ninjutsu, I will teach those who are capable medical ninjutsu. Who knows, we may even get Guy to teach them taijutsu, Tsunade said. What about your responsibilities as Hokage? Sasuke asked. I will get onto that, Tsunade responded quietly. The Hokage sighed. Aha, looks like even though that cursed Uchiha has destroyed our village, we are going to be using the same system of training our shinobi as his country does. It is effective, Jiraiya said. Before Naruto was banished from Konoha, they'd been able to get some intel on how some things were run in the Imperial Kingdom since Gurren was supposed to come to Konoha and speak to them about a possible alliance. Shinobi in the Imperial Kingdom were trained differently from other villages. Their shinobi academy was very different from Konoha's. Students weren't just taught the basics within the academy. Students enrolled from age 7 and for 2 years they were to be taught everything Konoha's academy taught and some. It was said that after this, students would be divided into groups based on their specialty. Then they were to be taught all shinobi arts for the next 3 years, and then they could graduate as genins. Well, that was the plan anyway. Tsunade nodded. I looked at it and it does seem to be the most effective method of raising strong shinobi. She paused and turned to Kakashi. This leads me to the next issue. Kakashi sighed. This is what I was dreading. You are gone to quit being Hokage and make me your successor, aren't you? The Jonin had foreseen this coming. He looked at Sasuke. What are you going to do? Sasuke merely turned away from the three and started to walk away. I'm going to talk to Naruto, but I will return to Konoha. I just have some things to settle with him.